Welcome back to PCW, where today we are reviewing Monday Night Raw. Raw this week was a little topsy-turvy. There was a lot of really good content in here, but a lot of stuff that I'm going to really rip into because it was just magnificently ridiculous. For PCW, I'm Tom Colhue. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and let's get started. Our opening segment was Miz TV, and what an absolute mess this was. A 15-minute long promo in which basically everybody got to say a couple of words which didn't really jibe with the rest of the characters in the ring. And I mean everyone. The Miz got to say something, Morrison got to say something, Drew McIntyre, Ricochet, Matt Riddle, for some reason AJ Styles and Amos got to say something, and at the end of it all, we ended up with a match between Ricochet and John Morrison. What was the point of all of this? Ricochet versus Morrison is something we had last week. It was very good then, and it was very good last night as well. We still got a high quality match, even though the Miz rolling around in the vicinity of Ricochet somehow resulted in a count-out win for Morrison. I enjoyed the match, and I like how they're being really inventive. Both of these are very talented men who wrestled in Lucha Underground. I don't like how much it involves squirt guns, wheelchairs, rolling around on the... There's too much overbooking going on when we really should just have a really good match between two really good people. Morrison got the win via countout, and next week we'll have a Falls Count Anywhere match between the two, in which I'd imagine the fall will probably happen underneath the wheelchair in a paddling pool. There's always water and wheels, basically. Jinder Mahal arrived on a motorcycle a la Undertaker's American Badass and instantly felt like a much bigger deal than pretty much everyone else on the roster. He will be taking on Drew McIntyre tonight, which was supposed to happen a while ago and was supposed to happen for the next few months. It's a clear indicator that a storyline has changed, and a big storyline at that. In an 8-woman tag match, and I'm going to read the names out so I don't forget any, we had Naomi, Nikki Ash, no longer Nikki Cross, she's Nikki a superhero, Asuka and Alexa Bliss on one side, Eva Marie, Piper Niven, she's named Piper, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler on the other. And it was a really interesting one. The pace of the match started quick and basically continued to be fast for the whole time. Alexa Bliss standing on the turnbuckle, or at least on the rope near the turnbuckle, over everyone, literally lording over everyone, was interesting. Nikki Cross took her first loss from Nia Jax and a Samoan drop, and there was also a lot of little nuance, not just for Eva Marie, who actually wrestled, kind of, but also for Nia Jax and Piper Niven, who connected in certain ways. Who knows, we may see some tag teams swapping over. The bad guys won here, so Nikki Cross and her, Nikki Ash and her superhero persona are already on a bit of a downward streak, but Shayna Baszler didn't lose, so that was good. MVP was interviewed backstage alongside Bobby Lashley about why it was made a tag match instead of just a singles match again between Xavier Woods and Bobby Lashley. I think most of us already knew that this was so that MVP could take the pin and Kofi could look good in the build-up to the Money in the Bank, but at the moment it gave them an opportunity to cut very strong promos. MVP's promo was good. Bobby Lashley's was better. The intensity in his promos has turned up another gear recently, and I'm really liking them. We finally got a match between Mansoor and Mustafa Ali. It's about time. It was only 3 minutes, and the main reason that the match was short was because we weren't supposed to be delivered an absolute Matt classic. We were supposed to be given a little tiny bit more of a piece of the puzzle to the overall story. This particular feud is reminding me of Corbin and Nakamura, in which I feel at the end of all this, both men will be moving forwards and have real storyline and character development. I'm really happy with this feud, even though it is very subtly played. Drew McIntyre spent 10 minutes beating the ever-living crap out of Jinder Mahal until Jinder Mahal's backup, Veer and Shanky, so Shea, turned up to ruin the day. Drew McIntyre didn't sell their offense. He basically completely ignored the fact that they were both attacking him until Jinder Mahal got his licks in and ended up having Drew flat on his back, standing over him. A good look for Jinder Mahal, even though it was a really tainted result to get him there. Drew McIntyre did win by DQ. This is far from over. The WWE have been trying to get Lesnar and Goldberg more involved, potentially for SummerSlam, to give Bobby Lashley a marquee match. It's also very possible, and I find more likely, that we end up with a rematch with Kofi Kingston at SummerSlam, so that leaves Drew McIntyre to go up against Jinder Mahal. It's also possible, of course, it'll just throw Drew back in there again, because why the hell not? That's the only star they apparently have. The New Day were also interviewed backstage to build towards main event hype. The WWE did really well this week in making sure the main event was always in our minds, and these little interviews go a long way to doing that. The interview and the promo was exactly as you'd expect. It's the New Day, but I did like that Xavier Woods did mention Tyler Breeze's name a couple of times, subtly, in that promo. I've said for a while, the one person that the WWE cannot afford to upset is Xavier Woods. He's getting more and more upset, and you can tell. In another 3-minute match that once again wasn't bad, Lucha House Party managed to beat T-Bar and Mace with a roll-up. Now, they were tossed around for most of the match, but still ended up coming back and actually looked good in points as well. It wasn't just a case of the big guys beating up the small guys and then getting surprise roll-up. Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik actually made a good account of themselves and deserved this win. Interesting though to see where we go with Retribution from here, because ultimately they've not really done anything since being Retribution. In our third hour draw segment, we had another match between Matt Riddle and AJ Styles. They've faced before, it's been very good, so it doesn't surprise me that they would do it again. Riddle for most of the match sold an injured ankle, but still managed to get the win when the Viking Raiders appeared out of nowhere to distract Omos, which somehow also distracted AJ Styles, which provided the distraction that Matt Riddle needed to roll him up. Distractions are kind of a big thing this week on Raw. Next week we will get singles matches with the Viking Raiders against AJ Styles and Omos. Couldn't tell you which was which, can't really remember, but I do know that the week after, so the night after Money in the Bank, we will finally get the Tag Team Championship match between Styles and Omos and the Viking Raiders. The reason it's not on the pay-per-view, because the pay-per-view is already full. Charlotte Flair and Rhea Ripley threw crutches at each other. This was a weird one. Essentially, Charlotte's medical update was to come down with a crutch and say, "I am hurt." It was very Mark Henry retiring. Rhea Ripley responded by coming down with a crutch and saying, "Ah, but I'm hurt," which did genuinely make me laugh, and I know it shouldn't, but it did. This somehow ended up in a situation where both women said, "Yeah, I'm not hurt, but I want to hit you with a crutch now." So they just sort of had a little lightsaber duel. I'm waiting for Duel of the Fates to start playing. It's going to. This shouldn't have entertained me. It really entertained me. In easily the worst segment of the week, as always, Jackson Ryker managed to basically bury R-Truth, Elias and Cedric Alexander all in 1 2-minute swoop. 2 more weeks and then we get to fans again. And when we're at fans again, ain't no one cheering Jackson Ryker. Finally, for our main event, we had the New Day versus the Hurt Business. The Hurt Business now, of course, is only Bobby Lashley and MVP, but they still call themselves the Hurt Business, so will I. This was about as good a match as you'd expect. Bobby Lashley was dominant and fierce the entire way, but was very rarely actually involved in the match officially. Instead, it tended to be New Day versus MVP. Xavier Woods, as you'd expect, got a long hot tag, and Kofi Kingston managed to pin MVP. This is so that he can get his moment in the spotlight, ready for all the video packages leading into the match with Bobby Lashley, without actually getting much offense in on Bobby Lashley. Raw this week was up and down and half and half. There were some very good matches, there were some very good storylines, there were also some really needless, pointless segments which really demeaned the people in them. So it's difficult to say whether this is a good Raw or a bad Raw. I'd suggest checking it out, but I'm definitely not going to be watching it again personally. Highlights for me were Mansoor versus Mustafa Ali, even though it was brief. Ricochet versus Morrison was good but didn't really get the time that it needed. And the main event. Of course, Riddle versus AJ Styles was also very good. The wrestling quality was good this week. The storyline quality is starting to catch up. Last week it was just Matt Riddle that was the entertaining section of Raw. This week there was a lot more going for it. Still no sign of Jeff Hardy, even though he did wrestle last week. Damian Priest also wrestled last week in the Battle Royal, but did not wrestle this week. He appeared briefly backstage with Matt Riddle, suggesting to me that there will be a Priest versus Riddle feud in the near future, leading into a Priest versus Orton feud later on as well. There are quite a few people missing at the moment. I keep hearing that Jeff Hardy's got a new contract. Is it worth it if he never wrestles? For PCW, I've been Tom Collihew. Like the video if you can, leave a comment on how you thought Raw went, and subscribe if you haven't already. In the meantime, I'll see you next time.